Frankie, you're very welcome to the Irish Traditional Music Archive. We're delighted, and I'm personally, as a fiddle player, delighted to have you here.
Thank you very much indeed. Well, it's an honour and a privilege to be here. Thanks very much for inviting me. So I'm feeling pretty good, all things considered,
Good, yeah. There's strange times we're living in, but it's great to, I'm looking forward to hearing live fiddle playing. I haven't heard fiddle playing of this quality. And
it's a strange time for sure, but certainly music helps us all through it, really, you know. I mean, it helps me through it anyway, I'm sure you as well, you know what I mean? It's just, I'm playing at home now, like I never played at home before. So that's great, that's proven to be really enjoyable, you know?
Yeah.
You know, gazing out the window, looking at the wildlife and small little birds. I've all these feeders out for goldfinch and all sorts of linnets and stuff, you know?
Yeah.
So it's great fun watching them and playing away, you know?
Yeah.
And so, strange time, but a great time, really. It's got us, I think it's got all of us a bit more focused in our lives in lots of ways. I like to think that what was known as the rat race is over, and it never returns, hopefully. People will probably go a small bit daft, like when they're allowed to, you know, but after a year and a half or whatever, you know, I think that'll be understandable. But I think it's a new outlook on life for everybody, really, and people are more aware of nature. There are so many people out walking and running and cycling and all this kind of stuff, and I think more people are listening to music at home, and hopefully they'll really start supporting performances and gigs, really, you know, paid-in gigs rather than just the free music in the pubs and stuff in time. So hopefully that'll all come around.
It's a interesting time as well, and through technology, like someone like you who's world class reputation for the very best of standard and traditional Irish music, and there's we see it here in the archives. There's such a growing interest from a practitioner's point of view, so people learning and playing and actively learning. And involved in traditional music in Japan, Korea, it could be China, Russia.
It's extraordinary. Yeah, I mean, I've done a couple of things down in the University of Limerick, UL, and there's music section there, and people nationalities all over the world, and they're good. Yeah, and not alone do they just play the fiddle, but they play flute, or or harp, or maybe all three. You know what I mean? It's extraordinary. The level now where Irish music has gone to, globally, not just in Ireland. Of course, it's extraordinary in Ireland. I mean, tots are playing great music in Ireland now. You know what I mean? So it's a fright. Yeah, I'm glad I'm not starting again. Let's put it that way. I'd be out of a job well by now.
No fear of it. But it was interesting. Like, people can access your music from your home. I've watched one or two of your concerts in your home.
Oh yes,
and I presume there's possibility for teaching. So even if we clock up our air miles, you've played it all over the planet, and so many different combinations. With Dannan and as a soloist, and with orchestras and all types of every type of concert. But to be able for people to access you at home and your knowledge.
Well, and that's the amazing thing about it. I mean, it's not that long before this whole thing, because COVID thing started, parents and different presenters on radio programs were talking about their concern about their kids spending so much time on the internet and all this kind of stuff. And I mean, it's now become a complete lifeline for their parents, like ourselves, because now we're totally dependent on it, and that's a good thing in the sense that at least we're getting to play a bit of music for people around the world, and do you can do some private classes, which I haven't done really. I've done one, I think. I'm not great in the teaching thing. I don't know what it is. I mean, I don't mind teaching. It's just when I'm thinking about teaching, that's what kind of bothers me. When I'm doing it, it's okay. What's that about? I have no idea. Yeah. But I mean, thank God for Zoom and FaceTime and all this kind of stuff. I've got kids living in California, and I've got lots of friends. In Japan and places. And it's just amazing. It's made the world so small. But it doesn't stop the hankering to get out and fly here, there, and everywhere again. To just get out and do what you love doing, and playing for members of the public. That's what's so amazing, and particularly, I mean, I love America because first of all, they all speak the same language. Well, so the accents can get you once in a while. If you go nicely down to the south, you know what they're talking about. Yeah. But must be the same for them when they come to Ireland. But nevertheless, having said all that, I think that you know, generally speaking, I'm sure like everybody else who's a professional musician, performer, whatever, they just can't wait to get back out and do a bit of it. Maybe not as much as we used to, because it was like we were all terrified unless we were constantly working all the time. You know what I mean? And that's not really a necessity, I think. What is important as a performer or as in any walk of life is that from a financial perspective, that you have enough. You know, that doesn't mean that you have to have an awful lot. So long as you have enough to be comfortably live on.
Yeah.
What more do you want, really?
Yeah.
And with, especially if you're a musician.
Yeah.
I mean, the amount of pleasure that we all get out of playing music for people, and the amount of pleasure that brings people, sure, that's a huge payment in itself. Do you know what I mean? And then if you have the few bob thrown in on top of that, sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
You can't beat it.
Yeah, there's more to it than a financial equation. Like,
oh, completely. Yeah. So I'll never, I'm not, as my great friend Brian Burke says, rich and financially secure. Nothing like that. You know what I mean? But nor will you playing traditional music, I don't think. Maybe the odd few.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah. Well, I was hoping in this process we'd look into your fiddle playing and your flute playing and try to kind of fragment that down and break that down into can we spot ingredients, or how you emerge as this very, very distinctive voice in traditional music. So if the radio's playing and Frankie Gavin comes on, I'll know within 2 or 3 seconds, and that's not not a talent of mine. It's there's a distinctive voice there. So if we went right back to your earliest musical influences, what would they be, or what do they look like?
Well, my earliest musical memories, first of all, would be that I wasn't able to play anything, but I was mad about music. So my older brother Sean and my 2 sisters Marion and Noreen, they were all playing music long before I was. Well, not that long, but a good bit before me, like a few years. And so I was soaking it in, but I remember getting a tin whistle for my 4th birthday. And I started playing it, not Dor, but Fáinne Ghriallais or one of those things, So after that, then I just couldn't stop playing. So I was just playing all the time. So I suppose then there was a man called John Darcy who used to come and teach my brother tunes on the accordion and style as well. And he was a lovely man, and he was very soft-spoken. And my brother would be learning a tune from him. And I'd be above in the bed because I was so young. I'd be listening to it from upstairs, And I remember one time, anyway, Sean was having a bit of trouble with this tune when John had gone. You know what I mean? And I started dawdling it for him. So I wasn't able to play it, but I was able to hum it for him. You know what I mean? But that type of thing was going on. So that's my earliest sort of memories. I remember we had a small little thatched pub down the road, then from the house where we lived, and there was an attic. With the floors were red rotten. And I remember going up there one time, and there was a couple of melodeons up there. And I thought to myself, why are the melodeons in the attic, And like you could see down into the bar through the rotten floorboards. It's the grace of God I didn't come flying down with the melodeons, Yeah. But I thought to myself, what are they doing up there? So I started squeezing a few notes out of the melodeon as well. So any instrument that would come my way, I'd try it and see could I knock some sort of a sound or notes out of it, So I kind of dabble at most things, really, which is great fun, because if you play the fiddle and if you play the flute, well, when you're playing the flute, you understand the fiddle player better than if you play the fiddle. You understand, your understanding of the different instruments becomes greater, I think, which can be quite an advantage, I think, when you're when you go to play with other musicians.
Yeah, or as on occasions, but you've recording with yourself as such. Flute playing, Frankie Gavin, and fiddle playing, and piano.
And I stuck an old track or two on the melodeon as well at one stage, So. Yeah, so like, I mean, it was all a huge experiment for me in the early days, and to be honest with you, it still is, I mean, you mightn't want to play the fiddle one day, but you might want to sit in the piano and foostle around with that for a while, or maybe pick up I came across the old Clark whistle that we had. My sister Noreen gave me the Clark whistle that we had when we were kids. I think it was bought in there was a shop in Galway called McCullough's. Yeah, it was a music shop. But I think that Clark whistle was bought there. Yeah. So it's, the old wooden block on it and everything, Yeah. And it looks like it's been run over several times, by whatever. But it plays beautifully. There's a remarkable sound of it, you know.
I was just recording very recently of you playing the sound like a Clark's whistle, perhaps with, and then a later track playing with Paddy Moloney, actually.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, there's one of the early days, maybe out in Connemara.
That was in Hughes's, yeah.
Yeah.
I was 16 or 17 at the time, yeah.
How did that? Because I'm trying to get a sense of where your fiddle playing progressed in that. So like the. I'm thinking technique, I'm thinking, what was that? What was the progression there?
I'll tell you, like my father and mother both played the fiddle, okay? And my mother was a nurse, so she was working all the time, or so it seemed. And my father was at home, and he had the pub and a small farm, but he had kind of more time in his hands for playing the fiddle. So I was listening to him playing it, and he taught me a couple of hornpipes and a couple of airs and stuff like that. But really, Sean, my brother, that took over the influence on the fiddle, and he played me all sorts of great recordings of people. Coleman, Morrison, Sean Kane, and Tommy Peoples. Yeah. They were the main four people.
Some heavies there, yeah.
Some heavies, you know what I mean? So I I was soaking up all what they were doing, you know what I mean? And it was amazing because I wanted to play like all of them. Do you know that kind of way? Yeah. So you'd kind of robbing from one of them and robbing another bit in from somebody else, and taking little snippets here and there. And the first time I heard somebody playing in E flat, it was Tommy Peoples, a half step up above concert pitch, and I've been there ever since. So it was Tommy Peoples. Not alone was he a fabulous fiddle player, but he looked like Elvis Presley. Yeah. Only Elvis couldn't play the fiddle. Yeah. So I mean, there's a lovely picture of him on the Shanachie record, and there's a close-up of Tommy playing the fiddle, and he's got this lovely jet black hair. I said, he looks exactly like Elvis Presley, only he plays the fiddle. Yeah. All the more reason to play like him, you know. But Tommy was great, and God be good to him. But and Sean was a huge influence on me as well, especially that whole piping thing that Sean brought into the fiddle playing. It's just extraordinary. You have it, for God's sake. What am I talking about? And it's like, so I was mad about piping. I was mad about Patsy Toohey. Oh, wow. I was mad about John McKenna. I was mad about Coleman and Morrison. Maybe more Morrison than Coleman. There was something about Coleman's playing that was just there was a sad streak through the whole thing, I thought. Even when he was playing tunes in major keys, he could make a major key tune sound sad. And that loneliness kind of got to me a bit, and I thought to myself, is that really what the immigrants wanted to hear, you know? And sure enough, it certainly was, because they wanted to hear this, oh God, that's lovely. They'd be bawling and crying, you know? Yeah. But Morrison, on the other hand, his lift and the lilt in his music was extraordinary. Yeah. He was very cautious about who he'd have accompanying him. Yeah. Whereas Coleman, it seems like he'd go into the studio, and I wouldn't care who was there. Yeah. You know, okay, here's the first one's in G and the second one's an A, and away we go, you know? Yeah. Yeah. And a couple of hours later, he'd walk out with a couple of $100 in his pocket. So he was making big money back in the day. Yeah. But I thought he was kind of careless about his accompaniment. Yeah. Fabulous player. Yeah. And of course, Joe Burke, the late great Joe Burke, brought Michael Coleman's music really to my attention at an early stage as well. He made me focus on it a bit more, more so than Morrison. I'm not quite sure why, but I thought Joe's playing, Joe himself used to say that he was more influenced by pipers and fiddle players than he was any accordion player, which I thought was extraordinary, you know. Yeah. But that was the thing about Coleman's playing, too lonely for me, I thought, you know. But still and all, it's fabulous playing. God, I'm not criticising him for a second, you know. No. And then, of course, you've Tommy Peoples up in E flat, and I heard Sean Kane as well playing up in E flat a number of times, and we had a couple of nice tunes together over the years, particularly down at the Willie Clancy Week in Milltown, Malbay. So great fiddle playing influences. So as I say, I've kind of drawn a bit from each of my favourite players and try and incorporate them into my own playing. It makes a lot of sense, really, and that's the whole process, isn't it? Bringing the things you like from the past and dropping parts that you don't like, and like filtering it down into your own personality. And then, of course, from a real technical point of view, I mean, you bring John Maguire into the equation. Yeah. Well, the first time I heard him playing live, so to speak, was down in a place called Crusheen. Joe Galligan had a pub in Crusheen, one of the famous Galligan family from Cavan, and he had Maguire and Josephine Keegan on the piano with him, you know. And I was sitting in the front row. Big mistake. Big mistake. Anyway, I thought he was playing. I thought, I was terrified by what he was doing. It was extraordinary. And he completely put me off playing. I wasn't able to play a note for at least 2 weeks, you know?
Yeah.
It was like once I saw a Caesarean with this Chinese lady with all these needles, and she was like wide awake eating an apple while she was having a Caesarean.
Yeah.
I wasn't able to eat for a week that time. But after hearing Maguire playing the fiddle, I wasn't able to play for 2 weeks.
Yeah.
I thought to myself, I'll never be able to, you know, this is ridiculous, you know? But he was a huge influence, and he just did all these amazing double stops and everything. And of course, he was master show-off person, you know. Yeah. And he would say things like, you know, I wouldn't advise anyone to try this at home. I mean, for God's sake. What are we talking about? Making explosives or something here? Just talking about fiddle playing in the Mason's apron when he was talking to Donegal Dooling one time. That's what he said. I wouldn't advise anyone try this at home. For God's sake.
Yeah.
What a character. What a character. What a player.
Virtuoso, really, isn't it?
Oh,
and he had that
extraordinary.
remind me of kind of almost like Paganini or something, you know, with his suits and
oh yes, absolutely. All pure style all the way.
Yeah.
Yeah, and all sorts of gold rings and medallions and God knows what, you know. But God, he could play. Yeah. You know.
I often think about him that like Maguire, you know, I've heard some people being critical of his style, but I think for any artist just to be reflective of your own personality, you know, and Maguire was that outspoken, could go into the vulgar and like shocking people.
Yes.
Lived an extraordinary cavalier kind of lifestyle as well. That I'd be so disappointed if he played very soulfully and
yes. I heard a recording of his made in the Drynon Dun or someplace like that in Fiddle years ago. I don't know who had it now, but Maguire was playing, and he was playing really serious music. In other words, like he wasn't doing the show-off stuff. He was just copying Coleman. Yeah. Oh God, it was great. Yeah, it was great. It was great.
Yeah, he could do all
but
that.
But like one time, apparently he was doing a gig somewhere, himself and Josephine, and he sat. There was a big grand piano, like, you know, and Josie was there playing the piano. And then he said, normally, you know, when Josie and I are giving a recital, you know, he says, I like to play the piano. And of course, Josie is a wonderful fiddle player herself in her own right, you know, and all this kind of stuff. So anyway, Josie took up the fiddle, and Maguire sat down behind this piano, and there was 3 pedals on it. And I don't think he ever seen a piano with 3 pedals on it before. And he says, and he was overheard to say to Josie, "Hey Josie, where's the gear shift on this yoke?" Go, and off they go. Yeah. But that was the kind of that's the kind of a character. Great album that he did with Joe Burke, by the way. Yeah. Powerful stuff. Yeah. Powerful stuff.
In terms of your relationship with all those fiddle players you mentioned, say Maguire, Sean Keane, Tommy Peoples.
Yes.
Was there? Was it from listening, or was it from? You know, was there? These are all, I'm sensing informal kind of observations when you're listening to people rather than any formal time spent with them. Or that.
Oh yeah, I would just try to pick up what they were doing. You know what I mean? I didn't spend any time sitting down, you know, getting classes or anything like that, so to speak. You know what I mean? More's the pity.
You know, letters between yourself and Maguire or anything like that? Or,
No. Tempting as that may be. No, it wouldn't be. I'd be afraid of what he'd write back, you know? Yeah. And I remember once I said, I'd love to do record a couple of tracks with you, you know? He says, I couldn't do that, no. And I said, why not? He says, the tax man. Yeah. He was trying to think if he'd have no intention of recording anything with me. Well, mind you, I had a bit of a cheek. This is about 25 years ago. Yeah. You know, but he said he was afraid like the tax man would rob him, you know, or something like that. He's quite a fairly wet excuse, but anyway. But,
are there any specific, if we took, say, Maguire, is there anything specific in your playing that you could demonstrate, like, that you think is somewhat an echo or somewhat derived from, or maybe Sean Keane? I know, say Tommy Peoples you mentioned there with E flat.
I mean, like Maguire was a great man for double stops, you know what I mean? Yeah. That type of thing. Dum, ba-dum, and off we'd go, you know, there was that kind of stuff. See, I think he was the first one that I heard doing these double stops, you know what I mean? And kind of harmonising with himself as he was playing. So I like doing that. So I'm mad about harmonies, you know. So if I'm playing in a band situation, I'm kind of overcompensating because I'm not alone. I'm trying to play the tune, but I'm trying to play the harmonies at the same time because I just hear all this colourful music going on, or I see this big picture and I fear I have to put these colours in here, there, and everywhere. Yeah, what I'm inspired to do.
Yeah.
It might get a bit cluttered once in a while, but when you listen back in the mix, as the saying goes,
yeah.
Or in the words of Desi O'Halloran, Pro Tools, it sounds a lot better. But I'm just, once I'm in that excited sort of state, playing with a couple of good musicians, you know, in a band situation or in a session situation, I can't resist but playing the harmonies to the tunes, you know what I mean, along the way.
Yeah.
Maybe the entire harmonise to the whole part of the reel, or the entire reel, and then go back to playing the straight again, you know.
Yeah, yeah.
But that would be something that I've definitely learned from the Maguire element, you know.
I know some of the things, say the Rose and the Header, and some of your, you know, some tunes associated with Morrison as well that make great use of double stops. You know, for me, when I was growing up, you know, I was intrigued by your use of double stops and chords. You know, that E flat or the E and C sharp, and with Dannan too. I often wondered with some of Alec Finn's
counter melodies,
the kind of G sharp B in a D tune. You know, and I could hear. I identify that as part of your sound
and you know
escape as such.
Another, when you mention Alec there, you know, when I met him back in the early 70s, you know, and I was still in school. I'd probably be in fourth class or something like that, you know, but I used to go to these sessions out in Hughes's and Fiddle. And once I started playing music with Alec, it just for the two instruments, the whole picture was completely coloured in for me. You know what I mean? I could just play the music and he'd do all the colouring. And of course, by sheer irony and coincidence, he was a phenomenal artist. Yeah. Great painter, great pen and ink drawer and stuff like that. He helped me with my artwork for school on occasion, you know. That's why I got an A. Yeah. It was all his ideas, not mine at all. I just kind of filled in the blanks, so to speak, you know. Yeah. But he was great like that. And he just made so much sense to the music, you know, and it's you know, 3 pairs of strings. I mean, D, A, D, or E flat, you know, and so on. It was just like extraordinary. The sense he made out of the music, you know, and you just wanted to play and play more and more. So with the amount of sessions that we would have in Spiddle, and of course the great Mary Bergen came down many a time from Dublin, and so did several others. And the sessions we'd have on Sunday mornings there in Hughes's were just extraordinary. Yeah,
a really distinctive sound emerged to my ears, and it was what I associate with when you mentioned Mary Bergen there and Johnny Ringo maybe on the bower, and that what I associate with like kind of a Hughes's sound on your fiddle playing in E flat. Yeah, Alec.
I mean, like and the whole band thing. I always wanted to have the band thing going, but 4 of us: Charlie Piggott, Johnny McDonough, Alec Finn, and myself. Each Sunday morning, we'd be asked to. Go on, lads, the 4 of you there, play something, you know what I mean? And we did, you know, we seemed to have these lovely gel of sound going on. The banjo was beautiful, the fiddle, bouzouki, and the bower on then for the bit of bass end and stuff. And it was lovely. And I think it might have been Phil Callery, great singer, that invited us to come up and play in the Neptune Roan Club, I think it was. Or maybe it was at Slattery's in Cape Street. I don't know which was the first one we did. Yeah. But then when we did that first gig, I don't know, I was like 16 or something, I think. Somebody said, God, the music is lovely, but wouldn't it be nice to have a singer? You know, to break it up a bit, like, you know? Yeah. Okay. Certainly, Mrs. Yeah. And I said, well, I know exactly who will fit that bill. Yeah. The great Dolores Kane, sure. You know, the rest is history, as the saying goes, you know. So that completed the picture, you know, so that got the band, you know, off to a great start, you know, particularly with the hit with the Rambling Irishman song that Dolores sang. Yeah. But the album was a great success as well, not just for that song, but the music on it as well was lovely. There was a great whole sweet innocence about it, you know. Yeah. And simplicity, and it was grand. And
like this is one of these classic instant classics that's age as well too. You know, there's no. I don't know how you feel about it that when you listen back, you know. But
and you know something, the first actual recording we did before we made that album for Polygram or Polydor, same thing I suppose. We went out to Radin na Gaeltachta, and I think it might have been Sean Bawn Brannock or Matty Joe, I'm not sure now, who did the first recording with us. And I have the actual cassette. I have the cassette of that, which is a kind of a yellow or orange cassette. It was like BASF. That was the make at the time. I still have that cassette. And it's just ridiculous to hear that, you know what I mean? Put that on, if you can find a cassette player, that is.
Oh, you're in the right place here.
Of course I'm in the right place. What am I talking about? Well, I bought a cheap yoke on Argus recently. And it works.
Well, I'll keep the receipt and we'll do it for you.
Good idea.
Then your debut Fiddle album with Alec, a company again, it became another. I don't mean this to ring hollow, you know, but it was an instant classic again, you know, and
honest to God,
it has its place in the in terms of classic recordings of fiddle playing. I mean, it's right up there. You know, you have your Coleman, Morrison, and it's another milestone.
That's like 31 or 39 years ago. I'm not sure which. It's one of the other.
Is it or something?
77, I think. Yeah.
What was the process there? How did you approach that recording? What was going on?
Well, it happened that Richard Nevins from Shanachie and Dan Collins on different occasions were in Ireland. And I think it was Richard that asked me to do a recording, just myself and Alec, you know. And we said, okay, like when I had all these different tunes that I was playing, and I don't know where I got them from, to be honest with you. I certainly got the Oak Tree from Tommy Peoples, for example, you know, that type of thing. But like, we had these tunes, and I'd learned some tunes. I had a couple of old barn dances that I learned from Sarah and Rita Kane, for example, you know?
Yeah. That
type of thing. And we kind of put it together. We'd rehearse a bit, I suppose, you know? Nothing major. But we were in New York, and we were going over to do a bit of a tour at the time, you know what I mean? And the next thing was, at the end of that tour, I think it was, Richard had booked the studio, and we went in and we did it in an afternoon.
Yeah.
Do you know?
Yeah.
As you do, like. Yeah. Well, we just did. Do you know, we were kind of, I suppose we were so comfortable in our skin, and the studio didn't bother us at all, you know?
Yeah.
We just rolled through it, like, in the whole afternoon. And I couldn't get over the response to it. I thought it was nice at the time, like, and it's still pretty nice.
Yeah.
Even if I say so myself, but it's, you know, I mean, it's, when I listen to it now, on the rare occasion that I do listen to it now, I think to myself, I didn't know that I thought about music that way then. Do you know? And I suppose I must have, because there it is.
What are the? I know you mentioned Rita and Sarah Kane and Tommy Peoples. Are there other? If you, in your mind, when you listen back there, what are the other influences there that we don't hear, or what?
Oh well, I mean Coleman's. What's that one again? It's
no. Callahan's, is it? No. Oh,
and
gone now.
And it's gone out of my head now completely as well.
I can hear Coleman playing it too much.
Well, that's right.
Lovely, yeah. Yeah. You know, the chromatic notes, where you're doing the F sharp, F natural, back to the F sharp there. Yeah, even the run at the end. Yeah. Do you remember, there are things, you know, with associated with your style and you know the Coleman
Yeah.
didn't do or did, you know what are the things, or do you remember points along the way that said, oh, actually this works for me, or you know, so the things you invented as such in the tradition, you know?
Yeah, I'll be honest with you. It's hard to say because, well, first of all, Joe Burke was the one that really, as I said earlier, that brought me the Coleman in detail to my attention. That and Lad O'Byrne as well. You know what I mean? And he was playing this tape in his car one day, and we were coming from, I think it was Joe Cooley's funeral. And he was playing this tape, and he said, "Who's that?" And I said, "Coleman." You know, and he said, "No." I said, "Well, who else could it be?" You know, yeah. It was the Lad O'Byrne. Of course, I never heard of Lad O'Byrne. You know, but Joe said to me, like, you know, listen to the rhythm. That's the secret. Just like that's basically all he said. Just listen to the rhythm. That's the secret. That's the secret in Irish music, the rhythm. And of course, I suppose, yeah, he's right, because the rhythm in Joe's playing, of course, is extraordinary. He has such a rhythm that it's what I would describe as hypnotic. And he could play the same tune for an hour and it would never be too long as far as I'm concerned, because you go into this hypnosis thing, you know what I mean? And you can just floating away with them, and you can't shake yourself out of it, nor do you want to, you know? Yeah. That's what, and Coleman had that as well, you know what I mean? Although, as I say, the sadness was always going through it. And I recently was saying that I never heard sadness in Joe Burke's music until he passed away. And then I was suddenly hearing it all over the place. And any tune, of course, that's because I'm so broken-hearted after Joe's, but that's all about, you know. Yeah. But Morrison playing really got a grip on me altogether, because he played at speed, although when you listen to him, it didn't sound fast. You try and play with James Morrison,
I haven't failed.
And it's another story altogether, you know. Yeah. And that's an extraordinary thing to be able to do, to play at that speed, and it not actually sounding too racy or too fast. I play fast, and then it just sounds too fast, as far as I'm concerned. You know,
it doesn't sound fast to me, but I have similar reflections myself. My own fiddle playing.
Yeah, but I kind of get excited, and I just like, God, this is great fun. Yeah. You know what I mean? After all, it is dance music. You know what I mean? Yeah. You know,
I suppose and Morrison and Coleman were both dancers themselves.
And they were, isn't that the most amazing thing? Yeah.
Yeah, there's
did
a
they dance and
practical element to what they played as kids, you know. And,
yeah, I mean, did they dance and play the fiddle at the same time?
Well, that's reputedly, but yeah.
That I'd like to have seen.
Yeah.
You won't see me doing it, I can tell you that
much. nor me. But this might be an opportune moment to listen to James Morrison. And
I'd love to, yeah.
The track I'd love to get your insights into is James Morrison playing the Tap Room.
The Tap Room. Yep.
PJ Conlon.
And PJ Conlon, the greatest melodeon player of all time. You know, back in the late 70s, I just wanted to mention this to you. I spoke to Richard Nevins in Shanachie Records, and I said, there must be all sorts of great accordion players, you know, because all I was hearing was fiddle players, you know, Coleman Morrison, John McKenna, Coleman Morrison. Then the next thing was, and he said, well, I've got hundreds of 78s out in my house. He says, you can come out there, I've got a cassette machine there, you can stay as long as you like and record everything you want. And at that time I came across the Flanagan brothers, right? 3-piece band, come on, fantastic stars of the day. And PJ Conlon, Peter Conlon, as he was also known as. And like, talk about melodeon playing. So he's duetting on this with Morrison, I think, and this is powerful stuff. Yeah. And listen to the rhythm on this one.
Yeah, well, that makes a lot of sense. When I think of your rhythm, you know, God. It's totally different than if we were looking at the kind of Coleman, or even Joe Burke's rhythm as well. It's a different. I can see you easily knocking sparks off PJ Conlon, the two of you together. You know?
Well, I mean, what would anyone give? What would I give to be in the same room as Peter Conlon and James Morrison? I mean, for God's sake, you know. Yeah. I'm sorry I wasn't.
Well, we could have them in the same room now.
Okay. Well, let's have a listen to this.
Roll it there.
Great stuff. Let's do. He's driving it there with the melodeon.
Punchy rhythm.
Oh my God, yeah. I mean, he's punching out what Morrison is doing as well. But you can hear him. He's really stuck in it, you know. And there's nobody like that. Nobody play music like that nowadays.
Yeah.
They should be.
Yeah.
But they're not.
Yeah.
It'll come round.
Yeah. Well, it's some of the. Every time I listen to the likes of those classic recordings, from the 1920s and 30s, they're really good, outstanding players. It kind of takes me by surprise again. Jesus, actually, I've forgotten how good these people were.
How phenomenal they were.
And there's still lessons in them, and there's still reminders. And
I mean, and then he was off there and moving bog.
Do you hear those little double, the kind of semi-quavers, or
with the bow?
Are they? I've heard them in your playing at times as well. Yeah,
it's like he's using the bow like a drumstick almost, you know.
Yeah.
Or he's using the bow like if we were to dowdle the music. You know what I mean? If we played more like the way we dowdle a tune, we'd be more on target to the real thing, like what they're doing there. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's the only way I can describe that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I mean, the bow hand of Morrison is a fright.
Yeah.
He ought to be ashamed of himself.
Yeah. Well, that's very insightful.
We wound up recording those tunes with the band, you know.
Yeah.
But we didn't play anything like that. But it was.
Well, reminds me, did your album as well with Paul Rock as well had a great take.
There's a good old feel. There's a good old feel in that as well. Yeah, and there was we called it a tribute to Joe Cooley, but there was obviously other influences there as well. There's a couple of nice Flanagan Brothers stuff, you know. There's that's the Flanagans, really. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I forget what that tune is called, but I mean that's just, you know. So I heard all these recordings. I was telling you about that.
Yeah.
And then with the Flanagan Brothers, I thought to myself, God, there's great melodeon playing here as well. So Joe Flanagan, Mike Flanagan, and Louis. Louis used to play the harp guitar. Of course, Mike was the banjo player, and a great character. And I heard him being interviewed on the Gay Byrne show on RT Radio one time, around the time that we had the big hit with My Irish Molloy, which was the song that Mike sung, you know?
Yeah.
So we convinced Maura O'Connell to sing that song with us, against her will, I might add. But anyway, but she did most things against, I'm only joking. She didn't want to sing that song anyway. Yeah. She didn't want to be an Irish singer of any description, you know, but I mean, look what it did for her, and look what it did for us, I mean. But My Irish Molloy, so I heard him on being interviewed on the Gay Byrne programme, and I thought, God, one of the Flanagans is actually alive. I thought they were all gone, you know. But he was in his early 80s at that stage, and he was going to be celebrating his 84th birthday or something like that, or 83rd birthday. And I thought to myself, well, by God, that's one birthday party I'm going to gate crash.
Yeah.
And sure enough, out I landed in New York and went up in the snow and the sleet and the slush with Dan Collins. Yeah. We went up to Albany, New York, and made our way there and got the address and the whole bit, and met Mike Flanagan, and it was great. I bought a bunch of the albums with me. Yeah. Because he was suddenly the Flanagans were heroes back in Ireland again, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it was great. He was delighted to meet, and you know, that we had brought the music of the Flanagan Brothers back into the Irish. I should look at every man, woman and child now, no matter what age,
Yeah.
knows My Irish Molloy.
Yeah.
That's how extraordinary that song was, and that's what it did for.
Yeah.
But that, you know, then Mike Flanagan and all his family came to Ireland and went to Waterford and got the freedom of the city of Waterford, then came to Galway and I got the freedom of the city for him in Galway. I wasn't the mayor at the time.
Yeah, a different year, is
it? Tom, what was his name, the mayor of Galway at the time, fair play to him. And so it was extraordinary, you know, the music that was there other than fiddle playing. So I had this extraordinary melodeon playing, PJ Conlon, and Joe Flanagan.
Yeah.
They were just amazing players. And there was another one man then, Frank Quinn. Now, Frank Quinn played the fiddle, he played the flute, he played the banjo, he played everything. He sang a bit as well, you know. He wasn't great at most of the things he did, but he had some great tunes and great choices of tunes. And there was a reel there that I put on an album, and I called it the mystery reel, because I couldn't figure out where I had heard it before. And I was asking Joe Burke, I said, Joe, where's this tune? Have you? No, never heard it before. He says, you might have written it yourself. I said, yeah, I wish. And I got on to Nicholas Carlin, and nothing doing. Harry Bradshaw, nothing doing. Nobody could figure it out where it came from. And recently, would you believe, I was going through one of these cassettes that I recorded out in Richard Nevin's place in New Jersey. And the next thing was, up comes this tune. I thought, what? Dog rough now, really rough playing, you know. Yeah. And I said, that's Frank Quinn. Yeah. And I wrote to Joe Burke and I said, the mystery reel is no longer a mystery. Yeah. Frank Quinn and his band.
Brilliant.
Even more traditional if it was in tune or out of tune, as John Kelly used to say.
Yeah, well, that's someone there. John Kelly as well. What did he?
Oh God, John Kelly.
Fall under his spell at some stage?
I did for several reasons. First of all, his fantastic cynicism. I loved it. One day I went into the shop in Capel Street and I said I was going through bows by the new time. You know what I mean? Of course, I didn't have a pickup for the fiddle or anything like that, so you know, I was leaning on it. You know, you were competing with a banjo for a start off. You know what I mean? Borrow on or so on. Anyway, so I was going through hairs in the bow, and I went in to borrow a bow from John in the shop, and I said to him, "You wouldn't have a bow? I'm going through hair at an awful rate this weather, you know, John." So he says, "Well," he says, "Mr. Gavin," he says, "I'm playing the fiddle," he says, "for 40 years," he says, "and I never broke a hair. I never broke a hair in a bow yet." And then he said, "But then again, I mightn't know how to play the fiddle."
Oh, God.
It was a great spake. Stop.
Yeah, God.
But he was slagging me at the same time, you know what I mean? But then again, I mightn't know how to play the fiddle, you know? Yeah. But he was brilliant, and he had lovely tunes. And I loved his concertina playing as well, because he kind of bounced the concertina on his knee, you know? Which added to this lovely rhythm, like, you know what I mean? He was punching out the rhythm that way, you know? Yeah. Quite a character. Yeah. And he was, of course, at most of the gigs there in Slattery's and Capel Street, he'd be down the back, like maybe with Joe Ryan or maybe one or two more. Andy Conroy. Remember Andy Conroy, the piper? Yeah. Talk about making the pipes talk. Yeah. He was another one of those great, no more than Patsy Toohey. I mean, he could really, literally make them talk. But he'd be down the back and you know, sizing up everything, like, you know, the pipe and everything, like that type of thing, you know. Yeah. And I'd go down and have a couple of words with him, like, you know, and see see what he had to say, you know. But he'd always have something cynical to say, you
Yeah.
know. But it was always awful funny, like, you know.
Yeah.
It wasn't bad. It was just cynical, you know.
Yeah, yeah.
It was lovely.
Yeah. This is a different kind of a mood or feel and rhythm to music. But I've heard you playing in that movement, you know, almost moving into that sphere at times. It's Paddy Canny as well. And can you speak to me a little bit about him and his influence on your playing?
I met Paddy Canny. I'll tell you how I met Paddy Canny. I was hitching from Ennis to Galway one day, and along came this kind of soft yellow coloured Volkswagen Beetle, and this huge man driving it with the biggest hands I've ever seen on anybody. Giant hands, you know, huge, big, massive fingers, you know. And he pulled up to give me a lift, like, you know, he was going to bring me out the road as far as wherever he was going to go. But I sat in, and that was the first time I think I ever met Paddy Canny, and he was the nicest man. And I went down, a couple of weeks later, I went down to his house and played tunes with them, and we played for hours, became great friends altogether. And he was one of the nicest people on the face of God's earth, as the saying goes. And what a player. And I don't know how he was able to play tunes, because, as I say, he had such giant hands, you know what I mean? And huge fingers. Yeah. And he was just produced this lovely, delicate, tender music, you know? And like, you know... flicker of the bow there as well, you know?
Yeah.
He was never, and he wasn't a busy player.
Yeah.
But he was a lovely, delicate, tasteful player. You know what I mean? Just the little effects here and there, you want to be listening for them, you know what I mean? And then when you hear them, you really hear them, you know? Yeah. But you have to watch out for them. They're so subtle, the little flicks of the bow, as I say, you know?
It's a totally different rhythm than the PJ Conlon and, you know, it's
completely. And yet he had lovely...
Yeah.
There was a lovely,
lovely
bit of rhythm and lilt there as well, you know?
Yeah.
Just a different type, you know? But still, that same hypnotic thing, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, that's a lovely album that he did with PJ Hayes.
Yeah.
And Bridie Lafferty, yeah. And
Paddy Moloney
was on that as well. The late Paddy Moloney.
Yeah.
Extraordinary. So they were kind of... Paddy then was a later influence on me altogether. I got to do a television programme down in Milltown, Malbay, called the Milltown Malbay Sessions. Yeah. And I had Paddy on that, you know. As indeed I had Joe Burke and Bobby Casey and all sorts of extraordinary people. Yeah. And what was your man's name, the singer? What was his name? Was it Graney or something like that? No.
Alan's our resident singer here.
Con Graney.
Oh, come on, yeah.
Con Graney.
Yeah.
Oh my God almighty. He sang some song about a duck or something, or a goose. Oh, stopped the whole place, including myself. I mean, we were out of control laughing. But it was put on Julian Vignoles was the producer. And he left it go anyway, because it was such crack, like, you know. Yeah. But I really enjoyed doing that programme, and I enjoyed playing with Paddy on that occasion as well, you know. Yeah. But I'd call down to Paddy on different occasions and sit in the house, and he'd come in from the land. We'd have tea and sandwiches, and more tea and sandwiches, and maybe a bottle of stout or something. Play tunes for a good few hours, you know. Yeah. Lovely man, lovely creature. And of course, that Eddie Moloney came into the picture then as well. Yeah. I mean, Eddie Moloney, I suppose when we were youngsters, he himself and the Tom O'Hare Cayley band would come out to Corndulla, which is about 10 miles from Galway. We had a small little thatched pub, as I was telling you. And they'd call into our pub for a couple of tunes, well, not a couple of tunes, but a couple of scoops before going up to play for the Cayley, you know. So anyway, I think it was my dad, or I don't know, my dad or something like that, or my mother said, you know, got me to play a tune for Eddie anyway, or for the band, you know. So anyway, Eddie said, would it be okay if I bring him up to the hall and you might play a tune with us before the Cayley starts, you know. So my very first public performance was with Eddie Moloney, and he had me standing up in a chair, and he was standing beside me. Yeah. So we're about the same height then, you know. Yeah. And I was playing the whistle with him, you know. I don't know what we played. Yeah. But that was before the Cayley started. Yeah. So that was when I was about, 6, 7 maybe. Yeah. And then we moved to Galway, and I got a job 2 or 3 nights a week playing the piano, right? You're looking at Richard Clayderman here, in disguise, yeah. Anyway, not. But anyway, so I was back in Eddie Moloney and Vincent Keegan.
Oh, lovely, yeah.
2 or 3 nights a week down in Riley's in Foster Street.
Yeah.
And then I got, when that gig was over, Eddie would have the tin whistle in the inside pocket, and that's when he started playing real music.
Yeah.
And he started playing these beautiful tunes, and he had the most beautiful whistle player.
Yeah.
And of course, a fantastic flute player.
Yeah.
There's one particular track on that double CD that his son Sean brought out there a couple of years ago, and he's playing for a dancer. I'm not too sure who the dancer is. It might be Paddy Moloney. I'm not sure now.
Yeah, yeah.
But if we get a chance to listen to that, we might have a quick listen and just to
roll that one out.
Hear this for flute playing. Like the first reel there in particular is a beauty. You know what I mean? Nobody's playing that nowadays. Yeah. Nobody's playing it. I intend to record it myself at some stage of the game, but I'm just after doing an album and I forgot to put that one on.
Yeah.
But his flute playing, impressed me a lot, and his whistle playing. But his flute playing is extraordinary. The way he set up the tune beautifully. He had your attention then.
Yeah.
And off he'd go. Then he could do what he liked then.
Yeah. Yeah.
But the way he just started that, it's just lovely. It's great.
Yeah.
Great intelligent playing,
Yeah. Yeah.
And Eddie was just very generous with his knowledge and very, very funny. Very funny. He'd have you in stitches almost all the time, Yeah. And he'd think of some story to go with a tune,
Yeah.
That he played some tune when he was out in the Ryan one time, and stop. I won't repeat, but it was funny, let me put it that way. Yeah. But he was amazing. And as I say, a great man to share knowledge and tunes with,
Yeah.
But
you left obviously a big mark in your own flute playing and whistle playing.
Well, he did, yeah. I mean, I think the first track I did was a tribute to Eddie, and there was like the on Crux Sousa, yeah. There was that real Devaney's Goat, which I only ever heard Eddie Maloney playing that when I was young, And I thought to myself, well, that'd be a great tune to include on the album,
Yeah.
But now it's a very, very popular tune, do you know what I mean? But I perfectly honest with you, I never heard it being played by anybody other than Eddie,
Yeah, yeah.
So that's why I was mad to get stuck into it, But he was a huge influence on me actually playing the flute, It was impossible to get a good flute back in those days when I was a youngster. And then Paul Davis came to Ireland, and he was very generous to me in the sense that he showed me that, this embouchure thing, that's the posh word for your lip shape, Embouchure, very nice embouchure. She's got a lovely embouchure. Anyway, don't use that. Do if you like. Anyway, but speaking of lovely embouchures, but that Paul Davis showed me how to get that good, big, grovelly, dark sound out of a flute, that bottom D thing,
Yeah.
And he took a lot of time to show me that, you know what I mean? And like that helped me a lot, because if you've got the right lip shape or embouchure, you can. It's the conservation of air really, rather than blowing it all. I mean, you can tighten up your lip shape and get a really rock solid sound out of it, and you're sparing a lot of your air rather than taking a breath every few seconds type of thing, So it's great intelligent thinking, and Eddie had that down to a fine art. He could get a lovely driving bottom D, but there was a great rattle off his flute playing anyway, you know. McKenna didn't have that really, you know, but Eddie did, you know, and Jack, what's the other man from the same East Galway as well? Jack.
I was going to say Jack Dole, up in Leeds.
No,
Tommy Whelan.
No, Jack. Somebody. He was actually Jack Coughlin.
Oh, yeah. So
Jack Coughlin and Eddie Maloney, great flute players from kind of the same parish, we'll say, or the same, you know. Here's this for Ireland. They were both tailors.
Yeah.
And if you hear Jack Coughlin playing and Eddie Maloney playing, you can't tell one from the other.
Yeah.
And it was Joe Burke that brought that to my attention, you know.
Yeah.
But just beautiful playing. But that was Eddie for you, and so I spent a good few years playing in the pub scene in Galway with him. Thursday, Friday, Saturday, or Friday, Saturday, Sunday. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But then himself and Vincent would take a little break, and I'd be left to accompany lads coming down from Bohermore singing, you know, Bethlehem and Jerusalem and all these kind of songs.
Yeah.
You know, I hadn't a clue what they were doing.
You have no recordings of that now.
I have no recordings of that, thanks, but God. But you know, I was really showing off my accompanying compliment prowess. I don't think so. It was pathetic, but anyway. Yeah. It was around the same standard there singing, and that. So at least we were matching in that way, you know.
Yeah, yeah.
But as I said, the great tunes would come out late at night from Eddie when the whistle would come out of his pocket, you know.
Yeah.
Great influence, and miss him to bits, you know. I knew him for so long, the same as I knew Joe Burke for so long. You know what I mean? I knew Joe Burke for like 47 years or something. And like, when you know somebody for that long and who has that huge influence on you, you know, you miss them terribly. And, you know, it's like if you lose a parent or both parents, you know, they're always kind of there with you anyway. You know what I mean? And you know they are. It's some strange thing. You know, I mean, I might be, you know, get up in the morning and say, I'd be about to think I'll go in and visit, you know, my parents, my pop and granny, like, as we used to call them. And, but they're gone for years, you know what I mean? But there's still there's the presence there. And that's the same with the music scene as well, I suppose, when Eddie is, you know, ever present there, and Joe Burke is, you know, will always be there.
Yeah, no, he's
heartbreaking, really.
Yeah, he was so generous to the archive here as well. Sharing those acetates of Michael Coleman, you know, that had never been heard
unbelievable
before. He'd been carefully guarding them preserving them for years, and
we
were so relieved that we got to
get
that over the line while Joe was still alive.
Yes,
you know,
and it was great to hear him talking about them on the radio.
He got to put the record straight.
Honest to God, But like Joe had this extraordinary, and no more than Eddie Maloney as well. I don't know what it is. Some people from another generation, we'll put it that way, right? They had extraordinary memories.
Yeah.
I mean, Joe could tell you nearly the day of the week that he met Jack, or Eddie Maloney.
Or Lado Byrne. He had the exact date off.
It's unbelievable, like, how do they do this? And where, I mean, like, and Eddie was a stickler for detail as well, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, you know, and Joe Duran was another man who was great, you know.
Yeah.
I met so-and-so, you know, it was 3 o'clock on a Thursday, I'll never forget it, you know that one? Yeah. 3 o'clock on a Thursday in 1928 or something.
Yeah,
you know, it's ridiculous.
Yeah.
Extraordinary.
Yeah. Do you fancy playing a tune, Frankie? I said,
yeah. Let's see. Yeah. I learned this tune from Paddy Cronin, a recording that I got. I was in London there a number of years ago, good few years ago. And this gentleman gave me a cassette of recordings that he had done of Paddy Cronin, Maureen Burns, Bobby Casey, you know. And this is one of the tunes that Paddy Cronin played. It's very like another one that there's a third part of, but we won't talk about that for a minute. I might go into that.
Ole.
The first one is a nice one, I think, you know.
Fantastic, isn't it?
I think it's the two-part kind of mixture of that third, the one with the three parts, isn't it? They're very similar, like.
Yeah.
Lots of tunes are very similar.
Yeah.
Some people think all the tunes all sound the same, you know, including the national anthem.
Then they stand up.
They all stand up and do the same tune again at the end of the night. You've heard that one, obviously. Who hasn't?
Cronin was he was an amazing musician, but he did amazing rhythm as well. I think his rhythm changed over the years as well.
It did.
But his repertoire.
But he's he's a musician from Kerry, right? You know what I mean? But like, we forget that there's great musicians that come out of, like, well, of course there's always great musicians in Kerry, but like we always associate Kerry musicians with Kerry music in the sense of polkas and slides and polkas and slides, and okay, with the few exceptions, Connie O'Connell and but then Cronin. Yeah. Cronin, I mean, some of the earlier recordings of Cronin, you swear it was Michael Coleman that was playing. Yeah. It's totally Coleman influence, you know? Yeah. But I met Coleman, I met this one, I met Peter Conlon. All this kind of, he'd be shouting at you. He was a deaf as a stick towards the end of his years, you know? But he had incredible tunes. He had extraordinary tunes. Yeah. I'll tell you a good one. You might have heard this one before, but Dan Collins, and Dan Collins as in Richard Nevins and Dan Collins from Shanachie Records. Dan was over in Ireland, and he was down in Cork, and he learned that lovely hornpipe, the harp and shamrock, which is a beautiful tune. Beautiful, yeah. That one. So, anyway, so Dan was determined to learn it, because he was going up to Kerry then, or over to Kerry, or up to anyway, after his visit to Cork. So he had this tune anyway up his sleeve, and anyway, didn't he meet Cronin? Anyway, he met Paddy Cronin, and he played. He says, "What do you think of this tune, Paddy?" Yeah. So and Cronin says, "I don't like it." And Dan Collins says, "You don't like it?" He says, "Because you don't know it." And here's another one you're not going to like. Oh God! And he played another one that he knew Cronin didn't know either. You know what I mean? But Cronin had an extraordinary repertoire of tunes. Yeah.
Talking about a totally different sound and rhythm, Tommy Potts.
Oh my God. I met Tommy Potts once in his house. I went out to his house. Oh, stop it. It was a fabulous experience, but it was like myself and Paul Brock went out to his house just on the hope that we might just meet him and say hello, you know what I mean? And he opened the door and introduced ourselves. "You'll want to hear a tune," he says. And we're like, kids being invited into a sweet shop, really. You know what I mean? It was ridiculous. It was fabulous, actually. So he brought us into the front room, and the front room in people's houses, the immaculate front room that the family are not allowed to go into because it's kept in this immaculate condition with, mallard flying into the distance up the wall and all that kind of stuff, And but we were there sitting in the front room anyway, this immaculate room, and we could hear him tuning up in the kitchen. Yeah. And he came in and he stood in front of the two of us and played for I don't know how long, right? And I was there like in utter amazement. I remember once, my face was wet, but there was tears rolling down my face listening to him. I wasn't even aware that I was crying, but I was just like awestruck, He was amazing. He was the most extraordinary player. And I don't know that he was. I think his music was beyond reach of everybody, really. In the sense, like other musicians, he was never a session player. You know what I mean? He was just a soloist. You couldn't accompany Tommy Potts. You know what I mean? You didn't need. He didn't need accompaniment. He was just like this extraordinary player, but a massive influence in the sense that, God, I wish I could do that. I've never managed to do anything like it. You know what I mean? I was often thinking of maybe slowing the whole thing down and try and figure out what he was doing, But it was mesmerising. I thought. I mean, did you meet him? Did you have?
No, he was obviously a friend of my father's and grandparents and that, but not
right. But he was a very spiritual man. Very, very. He was very firm about his beliefs, and there's a lovely interview with that he did with, I think it was with Micheál O'Sullivan.
Yeah.
Was it? I think it was at Hall.
Two here from South. So another one with McMahon, Tony McMahon as well is another.
Oh my God! Yeah.
Intense conversation.
Powerful stuff.
Yeah.
You know, he was saying something like, you know, he knows that there's another place, and I must get there. And like, God Almighty.
Yeah.
That doesn't give you the goosebumps, you know.
Yeah.
And get you on your knees fairly quick.
Yeah.
Saying your prayers. I don't know what will.
Do you know, going back to that, like that, you were involuntary kind of surprises your own emotional reaction. Sometimes I think of Tommy Potts like it's wonder about his music. Was it some type of like an emotional or spiritual journey for him?
Yep.
And did that was your reaction to that? Was it like you mentioned earlier about Coleman's music having this inherent kind of sadness? Did you feel any kind of inherent emotion within Tommy's playing? I thought
it was deeply emotional music for sure, and I suppose you'd have all the mixture of great joy and great sadness all mixed up in one extraordinary performance of any particular tune that he'd play, you know.
Speaking of, there's kind of something different as well. Tommy Potts has a huge interest in classical music and in someone like Fitzchrysler's music. Right. You're being one of the great representatives of Irish traditional music in terms of representing the really highest of standards of musicianship, and you've been put out there to represent the tradition as such in situations, so with orchestras or playing Fitzchrysler's Fiddle over in Washington, playing with Ghriallais, playing with on a world stage. What are maybe if we just start with Fitzchrysler playing that fiddle?
I heard the first time I heard Fitzchrysler playing, he was playing Swanee River. And I suppose that was one of his more kind of commercial recordings, really. You know what I mean? No more than McCormack singing, some real schmutzy Irish, you know what I mean? Kind of commercial sort of Irish song, be it Danny Boy or whatever the case may be. But, but it was beautiful. And in 1976, we were in Washington, D.C. with a whole group of Irish musicians and singers and dancers and everything. Molloy set dance with Ciarán McMahon headed us all up, and we had a wonderful time. But I was invited into the Smithsonian Institute, where there are 3 Stradivarius violins and 1 Ghriallais, which was owned by Fitzchrysler. So I got to play the 3 Strads, and then I got to play you can keep the 3 Strads as far as I'm concerned. The Ghriallais was the humdinger altogether. It would play itself, that kind of thing. Yeah. And I mean, it's just an extraordinary, the way these classical players can play, like Fitzchrysler or Isaac Stern and well then Yehudi Menuhin, whom I happened to meet later in life, and I did a recording with him on Bringing It All Back Home television thing. We did that in New York. Oh my God, that was extraordinary. And it was the time he asked me to fax out a couple of tunes, so I faxed out Dunphy's Hornpipe and I think another reel or whatever. Only he chose Dunphy's Hornpipe anyway, so we recorded that together. But that was amazing. But I found him such a gentleman and very, I won't say fragile, but he was a very delicate kind of a person. You know what I mean? He thought about music intensely. I met him first of all in Galway. The young mayor of Galway at the time was Fintan Coogan, and he invited me to play for Yehudi Menuhin, who was coming to conduct the orchestra in Galway, right? And I thought to myself, first of all, I had to figure out who Yehudi Menuhin was, right?
Not the Donegal Hughie McMenamin.
Hughie McMenamin, you're thinking. That's right. So anyway, I had to kind of figure out who's this lad. But I met him and played a few tunes for him in the hotel, after the concert. And we became very, very close friends, and we would fax each other, handwritten faxes, back and forth. And then when the Bringing It All Back Home television program was happening in the States, I said to Philip King, I said, I met Yehudi Menuhin, and maybe it might be something interesting for the program, And he'll actually be in New York at this. I found out where he was going to be, So anyway, he took time off, and we went to his posh hotel in Fifth Avenue and all this kind of stuff. and God, it was amazing, you know. But as I say, he was he was very respectful, you know. He was very respectful of other music and other cultures and so on, and he was particularly taken by Irish music, you know.
Yeah. Which was quite a leap for him at the time, you know, from the tradition he was coming from.
Oh God, yeah. But I mean,
certainly in Ireland, there wasn't a great history of mutual respect between traditional musicians and classical musicians at that time. You know?
Not at all. No, in fact,
when you went on an international level,
yes,
you know, reaching out to
and the extraordinary thing about it as well is that he was going to Belfast after being in Galway, and he was going conducting up there, and he was brought around to some posh music school in Belfast, right? And he wanted to hear this. He wanted them to open up a traditional Irish music, you know, department in the school, right? And of course, he wasn't in the right school, if you know what I mean to say. And his offer was turned down, for which he was deeply insulted by, you know, because he was going to put a lot of money into it, and he wanted me to kind of head it up there, you know what I mean? Anyway, it was way before its time, let's put it that way. But it was very nice, and I was humbled by such a thing, you know. Yeah. But then a couple of years later, I met Stefan Grappelli, the great jazz violin player, and we became great pals instantly. And he had already, I met him in Dublin after a gig in the concert hall, and I said, "Do you know any Irish tunes?" "Oh yeah, I learned this one from Louis Stewart." You know, I said, "Oh yeah, which one?" And he goes, exactly like that. Yeah. But there he was playing Farewell to Erin, which he had learned from Louis Stewart, 4 or 5 part reel, as we know. Yeah. I couldn't get over it. So, but when I took out the fiddle out of the case, anyhow, there was all this rosin on it. There is. I've obviously not learned any lessons, you know. Yeah. He was disgusted. He said, "You must clean your violin," you know. He was like, "God Almighty." He was really offended by the rosin on it, you know. But of course, his was immaculate. He plays the Ghriallais, and I play a copy. Yeah. The irony is fabulous, isn't it? But we went off and did a number of gigs together then, after that, called Jigs and Jazz. God, we had some fun. Yeah. We played in Celtic Connections Festival in Glasgow. We played at the first Peace Process Hooley in Belfast in the Ulster Hall. We went to where did we go? We went to Denmark. We did some gigs in Denmark together, you know. It was great. It was lovely. And he'd come and stay with me in my house and everything. It was just fabulous.
Magic, yeah. Pure
magic. And there again, a real gentle, soft-spoken, very delicate handshake, you know. But but he and Yehudi, they just had this extraordinary sense of respect for music. I mean, it was on another level. I mean, you know how we kind of take music for granted in a way? These boys thought about music in a completely different level altogether. It was like, you know, first of all, I think there were, you know, a lot of "we are deeply grateful" type of thing. You know what I mean? To be where they were. I mean, you want to see Yehudi Menuhin playing. I saw something on YouTube there. He was about 16 years of age. Oh, yeah. Ah, for God's sake.
Yeah. It's the wrong side of inspiration, isn't it?
Really annoying.
But, are there anything in your music you feel, and it might be indirect or it might be about the approach, from those experiences with Menuhin and Grappelli, are there things you picked up from them? Are there things that even in their preparation before going on stage, or how they rehearse, or maybe that respect, the respect, or their standards, or what are the things you think you took away from that?
Well, Liam, I think definitely the respect element was that was a huge element of it all, which I think I'd up to then taken for granted. They didn't believe in retirement. Stefan Grappelli in particular. I mean, Yehudi stopped playing because he was conducting at the end of his career, really. But Stefan said, "I don't believe in retirement," you know. But there was a time that jazz was banned. I think it was the Catholic Church banned jazz because they reckoned it was, you know, the devil's music and all that kind of stuff. They should have listened to some traditional music when they were at it and figure out what the devil's music was then, I can tell you that much. But there was a time that it was banned. you know, and you could be excommunicated from the church and all this kind of stuff. Yeah. Anthem is ridiculous. But anyway, and he told me about the poor times, you know. I mean, Stefan started, you know, living in a workhouse, you know, eating porridge and all sorts of bits and pieces, and he started busking outside a cinema, Fiddle. You probably heard that story, did you?
Well,
he was busking,
a little bit about it.
Playing as a young lad, you know, 13 or 14 years of age, and whoever was supposed to come along and play the piano for the silent movies in this particular cinema didn't show up, and they were there. What will we do, you know? Yeah. So they said, what about the young lad outside in the street, you know? And that was his first gig. He went in and did improv to the silent movies, you know? So that's kind of where his career began, apparently, from a workhouse, you know? Yeah. But yeah, respect. I felt that there was something very honourable about music, you know what I mean? And that this has to be treated very delicately and respectfully, as I say, and without repeating myself too much. But that has stuck with me. And then the joy they got out of playing, you know, and they would be excited about going out onto the stage, where I'd be like, oh God, you know that wrong adrenaline thing that you're all shaking. You've got the flutters in the stomach, and God, give me this, give me that, to settle the nerves. None of that works. You know, it makes things worse. You know. Yeah. But it's all about the right mindset, you know. And I'm just going to go out here and have a great time and have fun with people who have been kind enough to come and listen and watch. Yeah. That's, you know, when you think about it that way, it's a whole new ballgame. Yeah, yeah. And a sense of privilege too, to do something you enjoy and other people are enjoying. I mean, and be so grateful that people have come to hear and see, you know. Yeah, yeah.
Ghriallais' tone as well, what was that like up close?
Fabulous. Velvet.
Yeah.
Just pure velvet, you know. Really annoying. I know, but he's beautiful, beautiful, beautiful playing. Yeah. But yeah, velvety, silky, velvety music, you know. Yeah, yeah. But I mean, he had such fun. You can see it. You can see the devilment in his eyes when he's playing. Yeah. You know, he just, well, I try that. Yeah, well, yeah, I'll do that. I'll try that for the hell of it, you know. Yeah, yeah. Because you can almost see him, like, you know, kind of plotting out where he's going to go with this particular tune, you know. Yeah. I don't know what any of the original tunes sounded like, apart from Georgia Brown. Yeah. Everything else was a complete blinded mystery to me, you know. Yeah. But we did some of these things together, you know. Yeah. Were they
what were the challenges they encountered trying to play a reel or a jig, or, you know, it must be.
Well, Stefan, because of his sense of his improv gifts, you see, he could kind of copy. You know what I mean? What we were doing. Whereas it completely flummoxed Minuan, Yehudi Minuan, because he was so to the book, and, like, you know, he'd every bow would be this, that, you know what I mean? It was so exact.
Precision,
It was all what you read, you know what I mean? In later years, anyway. But Ghriallais had a greater sense of it because of the improv thing, as I say. So he was able to adapt to it a lot better, you know. Yeah. But I mean, you could still tell that it wasn't his music, and that he was in foreign territory at the same time, you know what I mean? The same as you can tell if I'm trying to play Georgia Brown, like, I mean, it's not going to sound like Stefan Ghriallais. Yeah, you know? Yeah. I don't think so. You know, you go down for the old shake and the D there, you know? Yeah, yeah. But so I bluffed along with that on several occasions with him and got away with it. Yeah.
Speaking of butterflies and stomach, playing in front of the National Symphony Orchestra as a traditional fiddle player, I'm thinking back at stories I've heard about you going out on stage for a dress rehearsal. Yes. I think with Charlie Lennon's The Famine Suite, I think. Yes. And I'd imagine if I was to be in your shoes at that, it would be quite a daunting prospect. But from what I heard, at the dress rehearsal, the whole orchestra stood up and gave a stand ovation, which I assume is very unusual at dress rehearsals, you know, for any soloist. So what was that experience like? That, you know?
Well, first of all, it was the discomfort of being there in the first place. I really felt incredibly uncomfortable, and I felt that, you know, I just felt that the orchestra didn't want to be there. You know, I just thought, like, what are we doing here, like, playing this stuff? You know, just like, and you know, they'd be like getting pencils and, you know, and look, watch this bit here, you know, that kind of thing. God almighty. It was just, I just felt I was being taken apart. You know, it was all up here, of course. You know what I mean? I was being critiqued from every possible angle. So I thought to myself, well, you know what? I'm going to play like the clappers. You know what I mean? And see if they can keep up with it. And if they can, good and well. And if they can't, well, affect them.
Yeah.
So that's how that came about. But I mean, it's the thing about playing with an orchestra. I've done it, I don't know, maybe 10 times at this stage of the game. That's not much. But the thing about it is, you've got to remember where you are in the tune, right? Because, and sometimes I don't, because I hear all these luscious strings and cellos and God, French horns and God almighty, this big, massive sound. I think, God, this is great, you know?
Yeah.
And then oh, mother of God, where am I?
Yeah.
In the tune.
Yeah.
And there was one time I was playing with this orchestra out in Belgium, and I'd say I was stopped for a good 20 seconds before them.
Yeah.
They were playing. Of course, I was finished a bit early, not because I was playing too fast.
Yeah, did they pay in advance? Maybe
I kind of skipped a few, jumped a few fences too early. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But it's an extraordinary sound, you know, and it's beautiful. But yes, daunting initially, but once you get over that, then we did the thing. Paddy Keenan and Dermot Byrne and myself and Carol Hession did the thing and Gavin Murphy was conducting with the RT, not the symphony, the what's the other one? Symphony and
the National Symphony Orchestra, the RT
concert orchestra. And we did that. We had a great time. We had an absolute ball. You know what I mean? It's pipes, fiddle, and accordion. Yeah. And Carol was on the piano, and like Carol did all these arrangements, and we just had a great time. Yeah. Because like like anything else, just when you go out to actually really enjoy yourself, you'll have a ball. But this, you're wasting such fantastic energy on this nerves thing, you know. Yeah. So I got it, you know.
Down with that sort of thing.
Down with that type of thing. Exactly. Well put.
What are your plans, your immediate plans at the moment, Frankie?
Well, I've just got to record a new album, which is different for me in the sense that, well, first of all, I've decided to dedicate it to my friend Joe Burke, which made me think completely different about tunes and music, you know. And he was always trying to get me to slow down a bit because I was always a bit on the racy side, you know. And he would slag me and say, well, you know, Frankie, I wouldn't be as confrontational now as you, you know. This type of thing, you know. But he'd be slagging me, but he'd be giving me suggestions, and he'd be picking nice tunes, and you know, he sent me all nice recordings, and he was a great man for Photoshop and stuff like that as well. You know what I mean?
Great sense of humour too. It's
amazing. There was a picture of him as a child in his uncle's arms, a big tall man, right? In his uncle's arms. He was only small Eddie with short trousers on him, right? Yeah. You know, and then he sent me the same picture, and it was my face that was instead of his uncle there. You know what I mean? So I was holding Joe Burke up, you know, small little Eddie like this. That kind of thing. You know, he was fierce, witty, and funny like that. But so this album is dedicated to Joe, and as I say, it's made me think about tunes a bit differently. So I've slowed down a bit, you know, not against my will, but these tunes have to be played at a particular pace. They can't be played racy. The first day, on the Friday, I kind of ploughed through, and it's just like that they're just too fast and frantic, you know. I was kind of just too wired up or whatever, you know. So I said, tell you what, we're going to do the same thing again tomorrow. We did the whole thing from start to finish again tomorrow, Saturday, which we did. And I was delighted with that, really. I was very pleased with the way that turned out, you know, apart from the odd bits and pieces here and there that you're like anything else. And so that done, which I'm delighted about.
This with Anya McHugh on
the... Anya McHugh, yes, and Catherine McHugh.
Oh, Catherine, sorry. Sorry.
Anya's her sister. So Catherine is on the keyboard. She's a fabulous player and a great character, and I had such fun recording it with her, you know what I mean? Because, you know, when we weren't laughing, we were playing music, you know? Yeah. And that's a great way to be, you know what I mean? Especially in a recording situation or scenario. So that worked out very well. I've a project that we were supposed to do last March, 12 months, in Monaco, which I did this symphonic suite that I wrote in honour of Princess Grace Kelly. Fantastic. Okay? So that's written and ready to go, but it looks like it's going to be September 22 now before that's going to be premiered because of all the obvious things that we started out talking about. with the COVID and everything. So it's put off. So in 2022, it'll be the 40th anniversary of the passing of Princess Grace Kelly. And of course, she was an Irish princess, as we all know. Yeah. And I met her son, Prince Albert, who's mad about fiddle music, by the way.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely mad about fiddle music. Yeah. So we're great friends. You know, I'm not, you know, blowing trumpets here or anything like that, but I mean, he just happens to be a wonderful character and great friend. And I mentioned this idea of doing a musical tribute to his mother, and he was thrilled about the idea. So that's how that's coming about. So I'm looking forward to getting that performed. And then I'm kind of tired of the band days for some reason. I don't know. I mean, I don't know what. I mean, thanks to Tommy McCarthy and Louise Costello, they kind of encouraged me to start doing solo work, you know. Which I did, and I'm having a great time doing it, you know. Yeah. So I've done a lot of work in America on my own, and it's great. It's kind of lonely in spots though, but you know, once you have the old sat-nav bossing you around the place, sure, it's great fun, like, you know. Yeah. I was in a car once with somebody, and speaking of Elvis Presley earlier on, she put on this sat-nav in her car, and the voice comes on and says, "Okay, honey, you're going to go down the road here, okay? And it was the voice of Elvis giving you the directions. Stuff. Yeah. I borrowed that from her for a week. Yeah. But anyway, but back to America, I'd love to see, and I don't see why it's not going to happen sooner or later, that Irish traditional music will actually get into the sort of the big arena thing, you know, where the masses will really get it. And I think I'm working on how that's going to be presented, how to produce such a sound of Irish music, keep the thing strictly traditional, but I think it's how it's going to be coloured in, so to speak, as I was using that term earlier on, and how it's going to be just presented to ears that haven't maybe even heard it before. You know what I mean? They're not familiar with it. I think it can reach there because I think it has the same capacity that classical music has. You know, it's just that I haven't figured out a way how to get into the arenas yet with the right, you know, with the right measure of getting
you've
there.
played in Carnegie Hall, you've played in all the big venues, haven't you, over the years like that?
Yes, well that's true, I suppose, you know, but I suppose I just feel that Irish music is so fabulous, you know. It's so rich and it's so beautiful. I want everyone to have a ball listening to it. I mean, everyone that's playing it are having a ball. Yeah. So now, let's have all the thousands, if not millions of people having a ball. Yeah. Going to concerts and having a great night out and be swept away. Yeah. To Ireland.
Well, here's to that. Yeah. I often wonder, like with in Ireland, sometimes you find that the audiences in Ireland aren't always as committed as what you'd experience abroad. Do you find that?
Absolutely, and that hopefully now is going to change after all this. When people are freed up, I think that people will be gagging to go to concerts and performances and theatrical shows and plays and this, that and the other. Everything to do with the arts. It's a great country for the arts, for the tiny size that it is. Yeah. It's got an extraordinary output and great wealth and volume of material on every level. And people come to Ireland for that, you know, everything to do with the arts, the music and all. So I think that it would be nice that Irish people would find the urge and the need to now support it as well, rather than, sure, we can hear that for free in any pub any night of the week. You know what I mean? That's the thing, but people have to make a living as well. And musicians that are playing in pubs, they're making a living, but it's not a living. I mean, you know what I mean? 50 or 60 quid a night is not making a living. Yeah.
I often wonder, is there a connection between our education system as well? So if you compare the general population in Ireland that have spent X amount of years in secondary school, they'll have the tools to understand Seamus, or to some extent appreciate Seamus Heaney's poetry or Ivan Boland's, but will they have the tools to appreciate Seamus Ennis, Liam O'Flynn, or yourself, or Tommy Peoples?
I don't know, but I mean the thing is, they can come here.
Yeah, well, maybe, yeah.
I mean, we're here in the heartland of the Irish folk, folk music of Ireland, or the traditional music of Ireland. It's right here, where I'm privileged to be sitting in the midst of you guys, and who are doing such a phenomenal job. So, I mean, yes, there should be courses in Trinity College about it, or wherever, you know, Limerick or wherever else. You know what I mean? And I think that when you go to say the All Ireland Fly and you see children, I mean, I'm talking about like 5 and 6 year olds upwards playing, all trendy young people with cool clothes and you know, cool outfits and all the rest of it, playing traditional music. I think this is great. Yeah. You know? Yeah. I wish I was 16 again. Well, no. 19.
Yeah.
20.
Yeah. One, maybe it's penultimate question. You know, sometimes I wonder about the Stone and things like that. Are the traditional arts given the recognition that it deserves in Ireland? You know, and I think of, we were talking yesterday with Christy Moore here, and he mentioned that he made representation, you know, I think in the late 70s or early 80s about Seamus Ennis to be considered for, you know, to be on a parity of esteem with other art forms within Ireland, you know, but
and that he would get the canoes in.
Exactly, like that.
Financial support.
Do you feel, in your experience, you feel the traditional arts still have a journey to go to get that recognition from the state? I'm thinking more so.
Well, yes, but the thing about the Aosdána is, well, I certainly, Brian Burke and Bob Quinn made a number of approaches on my behalf, and I was turned down every time. Yeah, I don't know what I did wrong, but I just didn't get it, and it was like, that's not original music. This was the first complaint. That's not original, but yes, it is. I wrote that, you know, and if that's not enough, then here's our Irish interpretation of the arrival of the Queen of Sheba. Yeah. Would that keep you happy in the classical world? You know what I mean? Yeah. But I just got turned down. I think the state needs to really smarten up here, and in lots of areas. Whoever the people are in Aosdána who make the decisions about tradition, there needs to be a separate section altogether that covers the traditional Irish music arts, particularly traditional Irish music, preferably by people who know what the music is about. You don't want people who know nothing about traditional Irish music, or there might be classical people who have no interest in Irish music. There might be jazz heads that might have no interest in Irish music, and certainly probably no longer playing, but they're making all the major decisions as to who gets it and who doesn't. I mean, I think a sort of the COVID payment, for want of a better term now, is a God's gift in a way, because at least it's the first time I ever got anything off the state. You know what I mean? And thank God I'm getting it. It's not much, but you know, it's at that level at the moment. You know what I mean? And it's a great sense of comfort. You know what I mean? And you can sleep easy at night because you've got the few quid coming in every week. That however long that will last, I don't know. But I think both, certainly on the national airwaves, on television in particular, when you consider how popular, that's a very poor word. I mean, it's an extraordinarily popular Irish traditional music is, from everyone from 4 or 5 years old up to 18, 90 year olds, right? It's not been properly represented at all, only for T.G. Cahir. I mean, thank God for T.G. Cahir, really. Or they put on a read in the that they'll hear it, you know, they'll hear it on that. But it's not all day long. If you go to the States and you put on a classical station, or the art stations on television, it's extraordinary what you'll see. Great performances by great players and everything. That's what we need in Ireland. I mean, if it takes a separate television channel to do so, you know, half the wages of the crowd that are in there at the moment, think of all the money you'll have left over for something as important as this. Yeah. But yeah, I'd like to see it, of course, see Irish traditional music held with great esteem. The harp is on our passport, the symbol of music, you know. Let's show a bit more respect to the symbol of music, the harp, and the passport, and the people who play the music.
Yeah, well said, Frankie. Yeah. Final question, and it's not what time's your bus. Final question. What would your advice be to young people learning music now, or in 50 years' time, or whenever people are listening to this interview?
A few very important things. First of all, don't play music for the purposes of making a living out of it, right? Because you'll come in with the wrong attitude altogether, I think. First of all, you have to play music for the pure pleasure of it, right? And the joy that it'll bring you, right? And if that extends into it becoming your job because of how well you're able to do it, all great, you know? But there's no point in everybody taking up music, and because then we'll all be out of work. So that's the first thing I'd say. Second thing, you absolutely study all aspects of, say it's the fiddle, okay? Listen to every fiddle player that you can, particularly some of the names we've already mentioned and beyond. And just let it soak into your system, you know what I mean? Keep it low at night time, and very low if you're going to sleep. Really low, and it'll be going into the subconscious, you know? Leave it playing through the night. It won't keep you awake, I promise you. I do it, and it's great. And it's amazing what you'll soak into your system in that sort of subliminal kind of way. Have fun with the music. I don't mean blackguard it, just have fun playing it. You know, it is a joyous thing to do. And it'll lift your spirits. It'll raise other people's spirits as well. And I think that's what our purpose is in life, in playing music, particularly professionally anyway. I think that's our duty to deliver joy and happiness to people, you know, because that's what it's about. That's what Irish music is about. It's the dance music of Ireland. Let's dance.
Well said. Yeah. Well, thanks a million, Frank. You've brought us through so much. And
thank you very much, Liam.
I'll be reflecting on these words, and really appreciate it. Really appreciate your generosity of time, but also your intellect as well to break down things
it's a pleasure.
Difficult process to self-reflect on all your
well, thank you very much. Yeah,
60 years of fiddle playing. Would you play as I lied maybe with the last question, but another one. I could phrase this as a question or an order. Would you mind playing another last tune or more if whatever suits?
There's one tune that my father used to love here played, and it was because it was his father's favourite tune, and it's The Green Fields of America.
Lovely, fantastic.
Thanks, Liam.
Yeah.
Great to be here.
Great to have you.
It's great to be anywhere.